What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. The second day of EICMA 2025 just wrapped up, and with that we can finally draw some conclusions. So today we are diving into my personal list of top 10 motorcycles that got announced at the show, bikes that have more to do with adventure riding / long distance touring. But before we jump into the list, I gotta say it's kind of a mixed bag this year. Not exactly what I was hoping for, or actually what I was kind of expecting. It's pretty sad. It's kind of like this Ducati Desmo 450 Enduro being unveiled. The European brands are lagging behind, the Japanese ones mostly just kind of doing redesigns of graphics and maybe some slight tweaks here and there. Innovation? Not so much. Maybe even a few big mistakes on some of the new models. Yes, I am looking at you, Kawasaki KLE500. Meanwhile, the real showstoppers came from Chinese and Indian manufacturers. And I don't mean just CFMoto, Voge, or Royal Enfield. I'm also referring to Chinese / Indian brands disguised as Italian or British brands. So quick heads up, if you're eyeing that British Norton or that Italian Morbidelli, just know, Norton is owned by TVS India, Morbidelli is now Chinese under MBP Moto, which is a subsidiary of the Chinese Kiwi Group. Royal Enfield hasn't been in British ownership since 1994, and more recently, even your Austrian KTM that was formerly owned by Pierer Mobility has changed its name to Bajaj Mobility AG, having been fully bought by Bajaj Auto in India. Now that doesn't mean that the bikes are bad, quite the contrary, as you'll see that they're the ones who brought most of the interesting bikes and new tech on the market. It's just good to know who's behind the badge. Anyway, without any further ado, let's jump into the list of the most interesting adventure and touring motorcycles revealed at EICMA 2025. Bear in mind the list is subjective, this is just my personal opinion. If you think that I missed a brand or it should have been included onto the list, let me know in the comments. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the Moto Morini X-Cape or Escape. It's X-Cape 1200. Well, let me start by saying that Moto Morini as a brand was acquired by Zongneng Vehicle Group back in 2018. Despite being owned by a Chinese company, Moto Morini keeps its development, engineering, and testing at its European headquarters in Milan, Italy. However, production of the motorcycle does take place in China. But focusing on the bike itself, this is a bit of a deja vu moment, simply as the X-Cape 1200 was already revealed at EICMA in 2023, but here we are 2 years later and the bike is just starting to show up again at EICMA in 2025. To make things even more complicated, the main distributor for Moto Morini just recently, and I believe just before EICMA, ended their partnership with the brand. So if you are really set on getting one of these bikes, it might turn into a bit of a treasure hunt if you are outside of Italy. But let's not get lost in logistics. If you're hunting this motorcycle down, it does have some pretty impressive highlights. You've got a large V twin engine putting out roughly 130 horsepower, Bosch cornering ABS, a touring setup that promises quite a bit of comfort, dual heated seats, cruise control, heated grips, and even a blind spot radar system. Add in a 24-liter fuel tank and it's shaping up to be a genuinely capable long-distance touring companion. So for now, it takes the number 10 spot, and not because the bike is underwhelming, but it's because it's that almost there Italian touring bike that we've been waiting on for the last 2 years. Coming in at number 9 is another Moto Morini, and this time it's the Kanguro 300. A really interesting revival of a name that dates back to the 1980s. And this time, under new ownership mind you, Moto Morini is giving the Kanguro a fresh modern adventure look. As in the name, the Kanguro 300 uses a single-cylinder 300cc engine that puts out around 34 horsepower, making this bike perfectly suitable for A2 license holders. It's built on a steel frame along with an aluminum subframe as well as an aluminum swing arm, keeping things light but strong, similar to that of a KTM 390 Adventure. And it's obviously aimed at riders who are looking for something more nimble and definitely off-road capable. The bike comes in two versions, a base model with a high-mounted fender and a rally version that swaps in a low fender as well as a compact windshield. This has more to do with the ergonomics on the bike because both versions maintain a relatively low weight, which should make the bike more nimble and definitely confidence inspiring when it comes to off-road riding. What makes it stand out and different from the rest of the lineup is the technical design. The fuel tank is located under the seat, which lowers the center of gravity, making the bike a lot more easier to handle when it comes to technical terrain. Performance-wise, the Kanguro will go head-to-head with bikes like the KTM 390 Adventure R, the Ibex 450 MT, the Himalayan 450, as well as the BMW F450 GS, which just got released. So it's safe to say that Moto Morini is diving into one of the most competitive segments in the adventure world. They're teasing that the Kanguro 300 will arrive to dealerships in the second half of 2026, and honestly, if they manage to deliver on what's promised, this should make it one of the most fun, small displacement adventure bikes on the market. That's why I'm giving it the number 9 spot. It's simply more accessible, easier to build, and more likely to happen than the big budget Escape 1200. Coming in at number 8 is the Kawasaki KLE500. A name that's probably familiar because it's actually a revival of an older Kawasaki model, now reimagined for the modern adventure market. It looks sharp, it's well equipped, and it's backed by Kawasaki's proven reliability. So on paper, it's got all the ingredients to be a proper mid-weight adventure bike. But here's the thing, and it's a big one, and you don't need reports from owners. This is actually in Kawasaki's own marketing video. The bike actually bottoms out so hard that the underbelly of the motorcycle actually touches the ground. Yeah, not exactly confidence inspiring when it comes to an adventure bike. So while the KLE500 actually has potential and comes from a brand that knows what it's doing, that ground clearance issue is a serious oversight. So for now, it comes in at number 8, a promising comeback from a well-known, reliable, reputable manufacturer. But until they fix that clearance problem, it's still got a bit to prove. Landing at number 7 is the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 Rally Raid Edition. That is a very long name. A very popular and surprisingly capable bike that's already proven itself in the adventure world. The base 450 Himalayan has seen some serious off-road riding across Asia for the past couple of decades. The Rally Raid version takes the base model and adds more to its off-road capability. It promises more off-road readiness, longer suspension travel, Showa forks, knobby tires, a rally-style tank, and updated chassis components. As usual with Royal Enfield, the biggest strength here is the value. You're getting a genuinely serious adventure machine at a fraction of what most rivals cost. It is powered by the same 450 single-cylinder engine producing around 40 horsepower, which, let's face it, is pretty much enough for most adventure riders. But for me personally, it takes 8th place simply as I'm used to larger engines, and I usually take my bikes for longer tours at higher speeds, something that this bike's not exactly made for. That said, I'm really looking forward to testing this one because if it performs as good as it looks, then you do get a lot of bike for that amount of money. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'll definitely be doing a full review of the Rally Raid edition of the Himalayan 450 as soon as I manage to get my hands on one. At number 6 on the list is the all-new Norton Atlas. And honestly, I would have loved to put this bike higher on the list, but even though it's been unveiled, we still don't know a lot of the specs of the motorcycle. Now, this is Norton's very first adventure motorcycle, which obviously makes it a big deal for the brand. And Norton, of course, is one of the most iconic British brands in motorcycling, a brand with decades of heritage, racing pedigree, classic design DNA. And yes, it's also one of Keanu Reeves' favorite brands. The man himself is often seen riding around LA with old Nortons. So if you're also part of the Matrix with the rest of us mortals, it's good to know that the chosen one is riding around with a Norton. The new Atlas is set to come with an all-new 585cc twin-cylinder engine producing roughly 60 horsepower. Although none of that is officially confirmed yet, there are supposed to be 2 versions, one more off-road oriented with 21-inch front and 18-inch rear spoked wheels, and one more touring oriented with 19-inch front, 17-inch rear alloy wheels. And I gotta say, the design, while a bit unusual with that all-white finish, is actually really futuristic and elegant. Like, the way all of their bikes look right now, I think that Norton is trying to sort of move away from the classic look we're sort of familiar with from the past, and it is kind of trying to pick up a new identity for its newer bikes, not just the adventure bikes, but their sports bikes as well. But if they are gonna stick to this all-white setup, I don't really mind. I think it looks really cool as long as the bike won't turn yellow over time, right? But until we get some more concrete details, the Norton Atlas will stay in 6th place for now. Still, it's genuinely exciting to see a new but very familiar name entering the adventure touring world. I really do hope this bike will make it into production and does well, simply as Norton has had its ups and downs over the years. Maybe now, under the new ownership of TVS Motor Company in India, the brand can finally get the stability it deserves and bring that British charm back to life, and now also in an adventure form. At number 5, and here's a real wild card, a brand you may not have even heard of but is making some serious moves on the market, is the QJMotor Rhino 900. On top of looking really cool, this bike comes from, and I apologize for my pronunciation here, Quinjiang Motorcycle Group from Zhejiang. Let's just stick to QJMotor for short. Is a major Chinese manufacturer that was established back in 1985 and today backed by Geely Holding Group, one of the biggest names in the automotive industry in China, owning about 36% of QJ. So this isn't some no-name startup. These guys have some serious money as well as engineering behind them. The Rhino 900 marks QJ's first step into the adventure category, but the real talking point here is the 3-cylinder inline engine in the 900cc category, roughly the same displacement as my twin-cylinder 901 Husqvarna, but more similar to the 3-cylinder Zontes bikes, which makes me want to test this motorcycle really bad simply to compare it to the rest of the lineup. It's designed as an off-road friendly adventure tourer, however, with its 19-inch front and 17-inch rear wheels, it does make it a bit more road biased relative to something like the Norton Atlas. Still, QJMotor, similar to other Chinese manufacturers, is bringing the full package. Straight from the factory, you get all the electronics, you get heated grips, heated seats, different ride modes, ABS traction control, and all the other jazz. Accessories that you normally have to pay extra for on European bikes. It doesn't seem like that important of a detail for a lot of buyers, but for me personally, in the last couple of years, it has made me pay more attention to Chinese manufacturers, simply as these accessories are not only included, but they do end up functioning very well. We're talking about, the heated seats that are, actually hot and they don't break down, the large TFT screen, which usually comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, not to mention brands like Voge, which also include built-in cameras into the motorcycle straight from the factory. So QJMotor is also bringing most of this premium package for budget-conscious buyers, simply to tempt them away from well-established European and Japanese brands. Now, QJMotor has also unveiled an SRT lineup, but that is a completely different story. These are fully rally-focused machines like the SRT 800 RX or the 500 CX, designed for serious off-road riders with features like multiple gas tanks and other setups you would normally find on rally bikes that actually race in the Dakar Rally. They're in a totally different league than the Rhino 900, and these bikes definitely deserve their own dedicated video. Hopefully I'll get to test one at some point, because who wouldn't want to see a new Chinese rally bike run up against something like a Colby 450 Rally or even a KTM 450 Rally replica. For now though, we are talking about the Rhino 900, which does earn its number 5 spot on the list as one of the most promising adventure bikes coming out of China, a new name for many people in the adventure world, but remember that CFMoto was once also in this position, and look at how far they've come. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the QJMotor story will be the next big success. But there is a good reason why I haven't mentioned the QJ SRT 600, and you'll soon find out why. Now, coming in at number 4 is the Benelli TRK 902 Explorer. And remember at the start of the video when I mentioned that things can get a little bit confusing with regards to ownership? Yeah, well, this is where it really shows. Benelli today is owned by none other than QJ Motors, along with another company called Kiwi Motors, which by the way also owns another Italian brand called Morbidelli. So essentially you're looking at a handful of large Chinese conglomerates owning a bunch of Italian brands, and my guess is it's not simply to maintain the brand names, but rather to have a better access to the Western market. But this is just my theory, I really don't know. Like, what's the reason to have all these brands? Considering you're building all of these motorcycles under one roof, why not just go with one brand and kind of just go all in? If someone out there has a better theory or idea and reasoning why this is all happening, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Anyway, ownership drama aside, Benelli's been busy. They've actually launched 3 motorcycles at EICMA that will be available in 2026. The first one worth highlighting is the TRK 602X, the successor to the hugely successful TRK 502X, essentially the brand that revived Benelli as a brand. It's built on a similar chassis with a larger twin engine producing around 56 horsepower. If it rides anything like the 502X, I expect this model to be very budget friendly as well, continuing to rack in sales for Benelli. But remember when I mentioned QJ's SRT 600F? Yup, it's essentially the same bike. The QJ SRT 600F and the Benelli TRK 602X are pretty much the same motorcycle. I don't know how big the differences are yet, but it's somewhat of a Stellantis type of situation where one company owns the two brands and yeah, you're gonna end up pretty much with the same motorcycle with different colors. But focusing again on Benelli, the reason it's placed so high on my list is because of the TRK 902 Explorer. This is their big boy adventure bike, which is a lot more off-road oriented, having spoked wheels, 19-inch front wheels, as well as 17-inch rears, so not exactly that off-road focused or not really going up against the likes of the MTX 800 or my own personal Husqvarna Norton 901 Expedition, but more rather like something like the QJ Rhino 900. Are you seeing the pattern here? TRK 902 Explorer, Rhino 900, 19-inch front, 17 rear, same owner. Yeah, you get the idea. But this is a Benelli which kind of has already proven itself in the past few years, hence the reason for going higher up on the list than the QJ. However, we shouldn't be surprised if later on they'll end up surprising us with something like a, I don't know, TRK 902 Pro Max or whatever, that is going to be fully off-road oriented with 21-inch wheels front, 18-inch rears. This is just a theory, but for now, I believe these bikes are super cool. Benelli have also introduced the TRK 902 Stradale, which leans more toward the touring side of the spectrum, having alloy wheels, road tires, and obviously focusing more on long-distance touring rather than dirt tracks. Now, despite the corporate spaghetti of shared ownership, it is worth highlighting that Benelli does have an active R&D office in Pesaro in Italy, where much of the design work still happens, so you are getting a bit of Italian flavor even though the bikes are built in China. All in all, the TRK 902 Explorer is a serious step up for Benelli, sitting right in that sweet spot between midweight and larger adventure bikes, looking great, and based on the track record of the 502X, offering the kind of value and feature list that could make a lot of riders think twice before paying premium money elsewhere. Coming in at number 3, a bike I was really looking forward to seeing is the Ducati Desert X V2. Now, Ducati didn't bring the final production version of the motorcycle just yet. What we saw at EICMA was a prototype, work in progress that could be felt and seen in real life, but not yet the final version. Still, it gave us a decent idea of where Ducati is heading with this bike. At first glance, the design changes are subtle, a few changes to the headlight cluster, some refinements around the bodywork, but nothing visually too dramatic. The real story is what's happening underneath. The Desert X is switching over from the 950 Testa Stretta engine over to the lighter 890 V2, ditching the legendary desmodromic valve system in favor of spring-operated valves. And that's a huge shift for Ducati. The Desmo system is basically the soul of Ducati. It's what makes a Ducati. But in the adventure world, where you want more reliability, less maintenance over long distances, the valve-operated valves actually make quite a bit of sense. You lose a little bit of the mechanical theater in favor of durability and service friendliness. And that's a trade-off a lot of adventure riders are willing to make. Now, I've personally tested the outgoing Desert X, and I'm currently working on the video. It will be released soon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see the full review. I was really hoping to see Ducati unveil the final production-ready version of the Desert X V2, simply to compare it to the outgoing model, at least in theory for now, but it looks like we are going to have to wait a bit longer, but I do expect Ducati to release the bike officially in 2026. And I'll be honest, I really am curious how the V2 rides compared to the current model, which in my opinion still feels more like a Ducati. Maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I guess whoever was going to buy a Ducati Desert X with a Desmo engine knew the trade-off, and they were going for the Desmo engine to begin with. That said, this is still one of the most interesting adventure bikes coming out of EICMA this year. It could have been higher on my list had we seen the final production ready version of the motorcycle, but for now, until we find out how the motorcycle actually rides, we are gonna leave it right here at number 3. At number 2, we've got the BMW F450 GS.
BMW, not BMW, Bayerische Motorenwerke.
The BMW F450 GS. The long-expected lightweight GS that BMW has been teasing for quite a while. We finally got to see it live, and I gotta say, I personally was really expecting this bike because I really want to compare it to the KTM 390 Adventure, as well as the Ibex 450 MT and a few other bikes in the class. The full bike has finally been revealed, and as expected, it is running a 450cc parallel twin engine that is producing roughly around 48 horsepower. From the looks of it, it's not as hardcore of an off-roader as the KTM or the CFMoto 450, mainly because of the wheel setup, which is a bit more road-oriented, but that's fine. As most GS bikes, it is clearly designed to be more of a small displacement adventure/tourer rather than an enduro bike. One big highlight that was expected here was the price point. I really couldn't find any official Western European information on the price. However, in Hungary, I've already seen it listed for roughly around 7,300 euros, but in Romania, for example, it is listed for 6,900 euros, and that is with value-added tax included. Bear in mind that this is just for the base model, but it does give us a pretty decent idea of where the prices should land. It will be probably more expensive in the US simply because of the whole customs tax situation, but overall it will be obviously a lot better priced than some of the bigger GS brothers. It is slightly higher compared to some of its direct rivals, but it is still surprisingly accessible for a BMW wearing a GS badge. And some have said that the bike doesn't look as good in person as what the hype has suggested, some sharper angles and whatnot, but it is simply recommended just to manage your expectations. It may not feel as premium as BMW's larger GS models, but that's kind of the point. This is supposed to be an entry bike into the GS family. Either way, I'm genuinely looking forward to testing this bike once it hits the roads, because if it does deliver on the promise of BMW reliability and performance, then this could easily become one of the most successful small displacement adventure bikes on the market. For now though, since the bike hasn't been tested in the wild yet, it'll stay right here at number 2. But once I get my hands on it and do a review, we'll come back and discuss it. Make sure to subscribe to see that review later on. And finally, at number 1, my personal favorite motorcycle announced at EICMA this year, and I don't really think that it's that big of a surprise, is the CFMoto 1000 MTX. Now, if you're already subscribed to the channel, there's a good chance you've already seen my video on the Chinese adventure bike shootout, where I have tested a bunch of CFMoto's adventure bikes, including the 800 MTX. If that model had come out earlier, there's a very high chance I would have gotten that instead of my current Husqvarna Norton 901 Expedition, which by the way, I really am in love with. The new 1000 MTX takes everything that was great about the 800 MTX and dials it up even further. It's powered by the KTM-derived LC8C engine, essentially a modernized revival of the KTM 990 platform, an engine known for its reliability as well as strong torque. So in a way, the bike brings back the soul of that classic KTM twin, but wrapped in CFMoto's own design. Visually, it's unmistakably CFMoto, clearly designed for off-road adventure in mind. It looks like a slightly bigger MTX, but obviously more purposeful, more rugged, and kind of looks like it's ready to take on the larger adventure bikes. Now, there are a few changes worth highlighting. Whilst the 800 MTX comes with the J1 brakes, the 1000 MTX features the Brembo brakes straight out of the factory. Not to mention that you can get a so-called 1000 MTX crafted package, which includes an insane list of accessories, ranging from a Krapovic exhaust, Acerbis components, along with GV bags made straight for this bike. This is possibly the most adventure-ready package any manufacturer has ever released. In my eyes, CFMoto have already proven themselves. I've ridden enough of their bikes to know that they are no longer the new kid from China, the no-name brand, but rather know that their build quality, finish, as well as reliability have been tested and proven. You can tell that they are serious about going up against the European and Japanese manufacturers, and I can confidently say they may even possibly dethrone them. So for me, for 2026, the 1000 MTX is comfortably in first place. It's a bike I'm really looking forward to test, ride, and possibly even own. If it performs anything like the 800 MTX, but with that extra punch and maybe even extra highway comfort, there is a high chance this will be the most successful adventure bike for 2026. This is why it earned the number 1 spot on my list for EICMA 2025. Not just because it looks incredible, but it represents how far the brand has come in a really short amount of time and where the future of adventure motorcycling may actually be heading. Yamaha, Honda, KTM, I hope you guys are taking notes. Now remember that this is my personal list and you might not agree with all of it, and that's completely fine. But if you think I've missed something or if there's a bike that should have made the cut, let me know in the comments. I always enjoy getting your take, and who knows, maybe your pick will make it into a future video. That said, there are a few noteworthy mentions that didn't make the list, but at least deserve a shout out. These are a mix of street-oriented tourers, true off-roaders, big and small, and honestly there was just so much announced by existing brands, by new exotic brands, by resurrected European brands that it's gonna take a while for me to digest all of the information. So here's a quick rundown. The new updated Yamaha Tenere 700, the updated Ducati Multistrada V4 Rally, the Suzuki SV7GX, the new Honda XL 750 Transalp, the MV Agusta Enduro Veloce, the Phelon and more Capetown 7X, the Voge DSX 800 Rally, as well as BSA's Thunderbolt. Quite a long list, and I would have loved to include something like MV Agusta's Enduro Veloce into my list. However, given MV's recent separation from KTM, going back to the art of mobility, there is just so much we don't know about the motorcycle, but I am following closely and I'm looking forward to seeing how the story develops. The adventure motorcycle world is evolving fast and faster than ever actually. There are more adventure riders now than there have ever been in history, and with all of these new models, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more riders on the road and off it. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more adventure content, upcoming motorcycle reviews, gear tests, and plenty more. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one.